thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the news. We begin right away with our major stories. The international community, especially media organs out of Cameroon, joined their voices onto thousands of Cameroonians to mourn Martinez Zogo. They say they want justice to be done after Martinez Zogo was kidnapped and brutally killed, abandoned on the outskirts of Yaoundé. And also in this newscast, religious leaders in Cameroon say they are satisfied, they have expressed satisfaction over the Canadian mediation to end the Anglophone crisis despite government's resistance. Those are our major stories.
The popular foreign news channel France 24 on the Eye on Africa.
Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. We just told you in the headlines that media houses out of Cameroon are joining their voices onto those of Cameroonians to mourn Martinez Zogo, the Yaoundé-based journalist of Amplitude FM, who was kidnapped and brutally killed, abandoned in Bogo in the outskirts of Yaoundé. Let's now have how the international media have been mourning Martinez Zogo in this write-up by Mala Glory.
The popular foreign news channel France 24 on the Eye on Africa program report that the death of Martinez Zogo on Sunday 22nd of January 2023 sent shock waves across the country.
What they've done to him is inhumane. He'd tried to reach the Cameroonian people. He'd criticize the things that are going wrong. He'd say the truth without any covering up. We don't know if it's because of that truth that he's gone, that he was killed.
France 24 says the International Press Institute, a Vienna-based press freedom organization, urged the Cameroonian authorities to promptly investigate the horrific murder and ensure that those responsible are brought to justice. The African News also condemns the death of the 51-year-old Yaoundé-based journalist who tackled cases of corruption, not hesitating to question important personalities by name.
How
can you leave us in this situation? We have lost interest in the profession.
Cette profession.
Pourquoi, se demande le journal L'Avenir, avec en une la photo du journaliste.
The recent month, on its part, exposes a society with several media houses whose journalists are not respected and where press freedom is tempered. The media urge the Cameroon government to carry out a fast investigation and let the results be made public.
Qu'est-il arrivé au journaliste camerounais Martinez Zogo? Par qui?
RFI, on the other hand, worry on the situation of journalists in Cameroon. The Radio France International, a French channel based in France, say Martinez killers must be punished. For Africa 24, Martinez Zogo has been threatened several times, as he was once jailed in 2020 and later released. It goes ahead to add that the journalist has been a victim of hatred. AFB and many other international media houses join their voices to condemn the killing of Martinez Zogo. They call on justice for the death of the media icon.
And now civil society actors too have been clamoring for justice to be done after Martinez Zogo was murdered brutally. It will be coming to their reactions that will be in the course of this edition of the news. Now we talk the Anglophone crisis. We told you in the headlines that despite government seemingly resistance to mediation from Canada, religious leaders in Cameroon have expressed satisfaction when Canada said they are prepared to talk with the different factions to end the Anglophone crisis, which has been going on for over 6 years now in the northwest and the southwest regions. And in a joint communique, the religious leaders say they have been waiting for a fruitful mediation for several years now to end the Anglophone crisis. Innocent, as I read through that communique, he now tells us more.
If the government of Cameroon decided to dribble the Canadian government and separatist leaders by rejecting its solicitudes for a peace process to find appropriate solutions to the armed conflict in Anglophone Cameroon, the initial arguments of the warring parties as qualified by the Canadian Minister of Foreign Affairs were saluted and heartily welcomed by religious leaders of the Northwest and Southwest regions in a joint statement. Being first-hand witnesses of the devastating war and the abuses behind it, these frontline advocates of peace underline the Canadian peace moves as a major step towards the search for true, sustainable and lasting peace in these two regions. According to the religious leaders, this has been their prayer and they hope the Honorable Melanie Joly peace process will open the corridor for an inclusive dialogue that should usher in a peaceful resolution of the distressful socio-political crisis in Anglophone Cameroon. These religious leaders in the joint statement appealed to all the stakeholders in this peace process to be honest, God-fearing, humble and patriotic throughout the peace deal and allowed the Spirit of God assist them in their deliberations. That all the parties will keep aside their personal or political or other exclusive interest to sincerely and determinedly work for the common good, inspired by truth, justice, love and equity. They as well stressed on the need for pride, might, power and egoism to be booted out of the way so that humility, service and altruistic love for the people of Cameroon, especially the suffering masses within the conflict zones. It is also noted in the statement that violence, killings, kidnappings, roadblocks and so on still prevail in the English-speaking regions. Thus, plea for a ceasefire which will promote confidence building and credibility as well as a conducive and assuring environment for the peace process. Still in the joint statement, the religious leaders implore the international community to assist in the conflict resolution without bias or egoistic interest so that peace finally returns. Cameroonians, especially those from the Northwest and Southwest regions, have been asked to pray for God's intervention for the peace process to be a success.
And now we talk politics. The senatorial election in Cameroon has been billed for the month of March, and the party candidates have up to January 28th, that would be on Saturday, to deposit their files. And in Douala, the Douala city dwellers say the Senate and the senators have been missing in action, especially at the local level. Out of the 10 senators of the region, the city dwellers could barely identify 3. They say they have very little impact on the daily lives of Cameroonians. A reporter for me, Armstrong Sanders, spoke to some city dwellers in Douala. He now tells us more.
In the streets of Douala in the Littoral region, the role of the Senate is not known. The importance of senators and which of them come from the Littoral region remains a mystery to most city dwellers, who say that their impact is not felt at the local level.
The impact of the senator is not positive.
To him, the senators are not felt and known because they are absent in local activities and the lives of the local population. He knows just one senator of the Littoral region, and that is because they are friends and the senator was once a member of parliament.
Pas beaucoup. Celui que je connais le plus, c'est le sénateur Thomas Toboyum.
There is Pierre Flambeau Gayap. I think he's a pharmacist. I think there is Dokulis. There was Dokulis. I think he's senator today. No. For their work are not easy. It's very, very busy.
This city dweller thinks that the problem is not limited to Douala and the Littoral region.
I think the impact of the senator is not correct in Cameroon.
Personnellement, j'ai trouvé le Sénat bizarre.
Tunguno Boni Okriol, there is a constitutional ambiguity about the role of the Senate.
L'Assemblée nationale a la possibilité de mettre à mal les décisions et choix pris par le Sénat.
He thinks that the Cameroon-style Senate is simply a copy and paste, which in the end weighs unnecessarily on the state budget.
And now we take you to Lokbesu here in Douala, where the local population there complain of the absence of potable water for over 10 years now. They say water has not flown from their taps for several years now. They say they have also complained or written severally to the Water Utilities Corporation in Cameroon here in Douala to no avail. Lucy Liengu Esia was there.
Water scarcity has been an obstacle to the daily activities of the population of Lokbesu Maitu, Douala 5 subdivision. Seeing water flowing from taps has just been a dream. According to Commandant Ba Tembeng, an inhabitant, for several years they have resorted to boreholes.
Came here in the 7th of January 2016. As I came here, the first 2 months we had water, which was coming from Snake. But after some time, there was no water. So we began begging people who have the deep wells with water. So we go and beg, carry. Sometimes we pay. We have to give them some money to collect water. And that's how we have been living up to today. And with my age, I cannot transport water again. I used to transport this 20 liters, that's 40 liters to carry to the house so that the children can bathe, even myself to bathe before I go to work.
Louisa, a student, says she finds it difficult to go to school on time.
They were over suffering about water. We come back from school, we fetch water. And times we go to school late, we have to fetch water before going. Times we don't even have water to bathe before going to school.
In a family of 10, Louisa says they have to fill in over 200 liters of water a day.
I just finished fetching water. We fetch water every after 1 day. And we'll have like 5 cars with bath and gallons to fill. So we're really suffering water a lot. Fetch water every after 1 day. But times we fetch water every day.
The people of Lokbesu Maitu say they have complained to the Cameroon Water Utility Corporation, CamWater, in vain.
7 years in this condition, we have contacted CamWater. Nothing has been done. Envavoie. It remains Envavoie up to now.
The population say the government can help them create more boreholes and connect pipes which can serve them.
And now we take you to Garua in the north region of the country, where a pastor has reportedly died in a road accident which occurred along the Gashiga-Garua highway. The pastor was reportedly riding on his bicycle when he was hit by a car. Smart Jikan Gabriel tells us more.
It was another bloody day along the Gashiga-Garua highway on the National Road number 2. A speedy starlit vehicle without a matriculation number knocked down a man riding on a bicycle at a place known as Njumasi. Due to the shock of the collision, the man, who was later identified as Pastor by name Ziguo Jeremy, died on the spot, while the car got damaged. The incident caused the people of Njumasi village to go furious and almost saw them lynching the driver of the vehicle, Abdurrahman Sali, and his car 8. But thanks to the intervention of the elements of the Pumpumre Gendarmerie Brigade, headed by Commander Bakachi Seijo, the driver was saved. Army rescue elements who arrived at accident scene helped to prepare the lifeless body of Pastor Ziguo Jeremy and handed it to the family for it to be deposited at the mortuary, while the driver and the car 8 who made the accident are behind bars at the Pumpumre Gendarmerie Brigade.
And now we talk sports. The intermediate Lions of Cameroon have been eliminated from the ongoing CHAN taking place in Cameroon, and the Lions lost to Niger by 1-0. Our reporter Smart Ndikan Gabriel spoke with a football trainer, Joseph Tumenta, who says there were some coaching errors during the last encounter of the intermediate Lions match.
A draw was the least result that was expected from the intermediate Lions of Cameroon in their game against Niger for them to seal a spot at the quarterfinals of the African Nations Championship CHAN. Unfortunately, the Intermediate Lions missed the chance by losing to Niger, 0-1, a defeat that pushed the Intermediate Lions out of CHAN 2022. A football trainer, Joseph Tumenta, believes the head coach, Saidu Alium, failed in some tactical dispositions which cost them the game.
I, as an old player, what I realized with the coach, when it was at the 17th minute, like a coach, if I was looking for a draw, I would have changed the system of my player. I would have even played with 1 attacker and 5 midfielders and 3 defenders. But at that area of the time, when it was at that 70 minute, they were instead trying to play offensive. That is why they lost concentration, and the Niger took advantage over it and had that goal.
He also believes that coach Saidu Alium dropping Canons Emmanuel Mahop, who was the Elite 1 top scorer, and Wasu Pasian was a mistake owing to the fact that those called up were flops.
I, as an old player and as a coach and as a director of a football academy, with those 2 guys, they really made a mistake. As the best player of the Elite 1, that of Cotton Sport, that boy would have been there, and the other young man. So those are players that, if those guys were there, I think would have been a different level, because even the scoring opportunity we lose from the starting day of play, those boys would have given a difference. I think the coach did wrong mistake.
The performance of Colombe of Ja and Lobo wonder kid Jerome Ngom during the defeat was worth commenting.
Ngom did a very good job. You know, there's what we call concentration. When you are going for a match like that, we're going for a draw. Ngom, he was not concentrated. That is why you see, when you are going for that type of match, at least the coach, the first thing the coach have to put 2 people on, you have to be on concentration. That is what makes a player. When you are going for a crucial match that you just need a draw, that concentration must be there. I think Ngom was not concentrated.
In 21 matches already played at the African Nations Championship, 40 goals have been scored, giving us an average of 1.9 goals scored per match. A total of 58 yellow cards were shown in the first phase of the tournament. Group A had the most yellow cards, 18 in total, while Madagascar left the group phase with just 1 yellow card in 2 matches played. 4 red cards were also given during the first phase of the tournament. Group B had 3 of the red cards, while Ghana in Group C was the lone team with a red card in this group. The tournament, which is on a temporal break, will resume on Friday, January 27, 2023 with the knockout phase.
And now, viewers, before we move on to talking points, let's get the reactions of a coalition of some civil society actors plus some political parties on the brutal killing of journalist Martinez Zogo.
A coalition of political and civil society actors are demanding justice for journalist Martinez Zogo, killed days back by unknown persons. They urge the population to stand up.
On Friday, we must be in black. We are coming up with more actions. Cameroonians need to stand up, join the action, and make sure that we say to this government, no, 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 and no. This is not acceptable, and it will not happen in our country.
Edith Kabangwala, president of the CPP party, raises concerns about the security of Cameroonians, especially those living in the conflict-hit northwest and southwest regions. She wonders how a journalist can be kidnapped in front of a gendarmerie station.
We must remember Wazizi. Where is the body of Wazizi up till today? Because things have been happening and we have not pushed hard enough against this government, it has given them the impression that they can do anything, including torture and murder, and nothing will happen.
The coalition accuses the government of poorly managing state funds while promising to take the government to court.
What will we do? Or there have been a lot of commission d'enquête, and nothing has happened. And then my response is that the government, a dictatorial government, only yields to the power of the people. So people have to mobilize themselves. Cameroonians have to wake up, look at what is happening in other countries, and then see in those countries how people can stand up and then say no. Cameroonians have to wake up as a mass, not sit down and then say, yo, let the leaders of political parties do it. We cannot do it by ourselves.
They urge Cameroonians to wake up from slumber and stand for their rights. If not, they should be expecting the worst in the days ahead.
Thank you so much, viewers, for being there. Don't go away. Talking Points comes up next. Welcome back, viewers. Today on Talking Points, we continue mourning and talking about the brutal killing of the journalist in Yaoundé, Martinez Zogo. And our guest tonight on Talking Points is Angela Quintal. She is the Africa coordinator of a committee to protect journalists. She is based in the United States of America, precisely in New York. Thank you, Angela, for accepting to be our guest tonight. You had a committee to protect journalists, which is the CPJ, and you had a communique, or you sent out a communique after Martinez Zogo was kidnapped and finally killed, condemning that gruesome act. You, as the head of a community to protect journalists in Africa, though you're based in the US of A, what is your appraisal of press freedom in Cameroon, a country you know so well?
The Committee to Protect Journalists is obviously very concerned about the state of press freedom in Cameroon. Over the years, we have documented a marked deterioration of press freedom, and we certainly saw an uptick in violations at the start of the Anglophone conflict. We've had several journalists in and out of jail, and currently we have 5 journalists who remain in jail, making Cameroon the second worst jailer of journalists in sub-Saharan Africa. The fact that there are 5 journalists in Cameroon, the majority of them dating back to late 2016 and early 2017, also shows that Cameroon is the one country after Eritrea in Africa where journalists are serving the longest in prison. There are other issues, obviously, to be concerned about in terms of press freedom. That relates to the fact that journalists are murdered with impunity. So we have the latest case of Martinez Zogo, who we know has been killed in a terrible, terrible, shocking way. And we call on authorities to ensure that there is no impunity, that his murderers are held to account. It is not as though there are not signs of who may be behind his murder. And so we need to see fast and swift arrests. Unfortunately, the conduct of government when it comes to the investigations of the killing of journalists or journalists who have died in custody, like Samuel Wazizi, is not very good. And so that impunity that we talk about, which does have a chilling effect on other journalists, is obviously something of great concern for the Committee to Protect Journalists.
Yeah, Angela, you just mentioned there that Cameroon is one of the worst jailers in Africa, the 4th. And now you heard the CPJ, which is a committee to protect journalists. How can you qualify the gruesome killing of Martinez Zogo, and what are some of the steps or the measures the CPJ on its part has been putting in place to ensure that journalists in Africa, Cameroon in particular, are protected and in security?
Yeah, and this is our methodology. On December the 1st, we look at how many journalists are in jail around the world. And on that basis, we're able to rank the countries that we regard as the worst jailers. Since 2014, Cameroon has appeared on CPJ's list. It is quite ironic, for example, that someone who was on our list in 2014, a journalist at the time, is now a lawyer and is actually the defense lawyer for one of the journalists, Kingsley Njoka, who continues to be detained. All the journalists, bar that of Amadou Vamuke, are actually being held in connection to anti-state charges. And certainly within the United Nations, the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention there is a sense that these journalists are arbitrarily detained, and there have been calls that CPJ has echoed for years that these journalists should be released.
And you just mentioned too, Angela, that journalism seems to be becoming a crime recently in Cameroon. What is the CPJ saying about that? Because it looks like journalists in Cameroon are totally, or 80% of journalists in Cameroon are insecure. What is the CPJ doing about that? Coming back to my last question, in other words.
There is no need to keep journalists in jail for their work. And that is what essentially the government has done. It has silenced journalists by jailing them because they believe that they are critical or do not toe the government line in terms of their thinking. And so it is important, as a show of goodwill, that the journalists are released. A journalist does not belong behind bars. Journalism is not a crime.
You've mentioned about 2 times in your responses, Angela, that Cameroon is the 4th worst jailers in Africa. What can be the basis of that finding or of that ranking?
I think that it is important, certainly in our advocacy efforts, to ensure that journalists are released, that governments and themselves, but also the wider international community, understands where a government stands. And so it has an effect, obviously, even in terms of the image of a country. When it is known as one of the worst jailers of journalists, obviously it has a knock-on effect. And so it is not a record to be proud of. And that one would hope that Cameroon will do the right thing and use this opportunity now that there is to ensure that the journalists are in fact released, but also to show that journalists are not killed with impunity in Cameroon. So our call is for the government of Cameroon to act swiftly to ensure that there is an independent, transparent, and credible investigation into Martinez Zogo's murder, brutal murder, that those who ordered and executed the killing are held to account, that no one escapes justice in this sense.
Angela, my last question before we part company, do you think that ranking can instigate the governments to take a glance and get serious with the protection of journalists in Cameroon after the brutal killing of Martinez Zogo, and your findings?
In relation to what happened to Samuel Wazizi, the fact that he died in custody, that his family have yet to receive his body, that there has not been a credible, transparent inquiry by the government into his death. Certainly, what we have seen so far has not been good enough. And if anything, it should be independent and actually have international input in terms of a proper investigation, so that those who were party to what happened to Samuel Wazizi, because he was held, it was an enforced disappearance. I mean, it's not as though CPJ did not try to ensure that we found out what happened. We were in court. We, with our partners, had various court applications trying to ensure that authorities handed him over. And the fact that they only announced a year after he had actually died in their custody that he had in fact been killed, I think says more about what actually happened. The truth about the fact that he died in custody and, as we suspect, was tortured and killed in custody than it does to the fact that this was someone who simply died of sepsis. If there was nothing to hide, we would not have had the sort of silence. We would not have had the family still waiting for his body to be handed over.
Thank you so much, Angela Quinta, for accepting to be our guest on Talking Points tonight. Just to remind our viewers that you're the Africa coordinator of the Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ, and we're talking to us from New York in the US of A. Viewers, thank you so much for being there. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte.